Two guys not related, yet somehow are given the same name. It's time for the Two Daves podcast, where we'll answer the age-old question, are two Daves better than one? And now, here's Dave and Dave.
Welcome back to another Two Daves podcast. Today we answer the question, I did what? Hey, I'm Dave.
And I'm Dave, and this ain't tacos. Hey, friends, please don't forget to subscribe and share this podcast with your friends and your enemies if you like. We are building the Two Daves Nation. We invite you to be a part of this fun-filled journey. Hey, listen, Dave, before we get any further in this podcast, I have an on-air correction that I need to make.
Oh, boy.
We are now, broadcasting the episodes that we've recorded several weeks back. And last week's, or maybe it's been a couple of weeks ago, I got some interesting text messages from my daughter because I made a statement on a podcast a few weeks back where I said that my kids had not seen Back to the Future. We were talking about that movie, about how great we think it is. And I said, my kids have not seen it.
I remember because we conversed about that.
We did. Well, Amy was a little incensed by that. She texted me. She says, I have seen Back to the Future parts 1 and 2, and I told you that. And I said, oh, but so I said, well, I tell you what, I will issue an on-air apology. And she appreciated that. So she took a long time to see it, but she did finally watch Back to the Future parts 1 and 2. I don't care about part 2. I don't care for that movie, but she saw part 1 and she loved it. She liked it. So there you go. Amy, are you happy?
You're right. The Back to the Future 2 was terrible.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't like that.
Not as bad as part 3.
Oh, really? I like 3 better than 2.
Really? Oh, part 3 is worthless. But,
yeah.
Well, anyway.
There's a podcast coming up about that.
Part 2 is interesting to see what, in the 80s, what their perception of 2015 would be like.
That's true. That is true. We should talk about that sometime.
Let's do it. Let's do a Back to the Future episode.
That'd be great. You be Doc?
Yeah. Why do I have to be Doc?
Well, I mean, you look like him, so.
I want to be Einstein.
Yeah, you can do that. Yeah, you can be Einstein. I want to be Biff.
No, you can be Marty, or not Marty, George McFly. Do it.
Oh, boy.
Come on, do it.
No way. You have to watch our intro one that we do.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, that's him. Yeah. Whatever.
All right. Well,
thanks,
hey,
Dave.
I do have one more correction.
Oh, no.
We were talking about various modes of transportation that we've taken.
Yes.
And my oldest daughter texted me after she heard that one, and she says, you forgot a couple that you've done. Subway. Which is true. Have you ridden the subway?
No, I have not. I've ridden the L train in Chicago, but that's not subway.
Right. And then also she reminded me that I've taken a rickshaw ride.
Oh, wow. No, where was that at?
I rode a rickshaw in Bangladesh.
Mm-hmm.
And I also, believe it or not, Hannah, my youngest daughter, and I rode a rickshaw in Orlando. So.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? I've ridden the Disney tram and the monorail.
Oh, yeah. Me too. Okay. Oh, and those ski lift things that they have, like in
the sky lift.
Parks. Yeah. So there we go. See, we're coming up with stuff all the time.
Yeah.
All right. Well, hey, listen, last week we started a new segment and we're calling it the Two Daves Fact of the Day. And the whole idea is to just simply help our audience be the best they can be. And we want to be a part of making it happen. So Dave, I gave the last one last week. So why don't you go ahead and give us today's fun fact?
Okay. Well, we have no sponsors yet, but I'm looking forward to having some sponsors to, sponsor our fact of the day. We'll see what happens there. Anyway, our second 2 days fact is this: rubber bands last longer when refrigerated.
Oh man, rubber bands last longer when refrigerated. Thank you so much. You know what though? I didn't know that.
You did.
I heard. I heard Dan Quayle mention it in a speech one time. So anyway,
okay.
Tonight we thought it would be fun to look at unusual wedding traditions from around the world. My daughter is going to be getting, my oldest daughter. I've mentioned all three of my daughters now.
Yes.
My oldest daughter is getting married here at the end of the month.
Congratulations.
Yeah. So I'm thinking that maybe she needs to list. Of course, by the time she hears this, she'll be an old married woman, probably with 18 children. But maybe she could get some ideas for her wedding, because these are some great traditions from around the world that maybe we should incorporate into our weddings. The first one is called beating the groom's feet. Beating the groom's feet. It's a tradition in South Korea to beat the groom's feet with bamboo sticks and dead fish. Yeah, according to South Korean marriage tradition, it's done so that the groom can be strong to handle the coming responsibilities on his shoulders of the family. Yeah.
Is that kind of like the same thing when your wife says, "What do you want me to do? Beat you over the head with the broom or what?" I mean,
that's where that comes from.
Okay. All right. I get that.
Yeah.
Well, I have an interesting one, Dave. It's called Hold It In. Now,
Hold it in.
Yeah.
Now,
this,
what?
Huh?
That's what marriage is all about. Holding it in.
Well, I don't know if it's like what you're thinking of here, but now this one actually might shock you. It's a ritual in Borneo in a community called Taidong to test the bride and groom's commitment towards each other. Yes? What are you laughing about?
just chuckling. Thought of a joke.
Okay. All right. The challenge is this: they're not allowed to use the toilet for 72 hours. This test is somehow aimed to make the bond of the future couple stronger.
How is that supposed to happen?
I have no clue, but you know what? Here's the one thing for sure. You go into your marriage with bladder infections. I can guarantee you that.
Well, I guess, bathroom experiences can kind of make the marriage bond grow stronger. Do you know that on our honeymoon, we went to a Mexican restaurant in Springfield, Missouri? All right. Anyway, moving right along.
Is a plunger involved?
No.
Oh, okay.
Nothing to plunge, man. I mean, anyway, we'll go on. Hey, this was it's all about keeping things serious, because while most about to be marrieds brim with excitement and anticipation,
mm-hmm.
Congo couples have to keep their happiness in check, because during the entire wedding day, from ceremony to reception, the two are not allowed to smile. That's right, because if they do, it would mean they aren't serious about marriage. And you know what I'm thinking? I think maybe your wife must be from Congo. I don't think she smiled at all the day of your wedding.
I'm thinking that's not a tradition in Congo. That's a tradition in America.
Yeah.
Okay, here's a good one. Shooting the bride.
Shooting the bride.
Yes.
Okay.
China is known for a couple of weird wedding traditions.
China is known for a lot of stupid things.
Yes, anyway, they are. Ahead. One of them being the shooting of the bride with arrows. Of course, these arrows don't have arrowheads.
No, they don't.
So it's harmless tradition,
Okay.
Where the groom shoots the arrows at the bride, made out of wood, going probably 150 miles an hour. After targeting her, he picks up the arrows and breaks them in half. This is said to symbolize their love for each other. It sounds like a good tradition to have in our own marriages, doesn't it?
Well, I'm a little flummoxed. I'm flummoxed. Have you used that word in the last week?
No, I have not.
Well, I am flummoxed because I can't figure out how shooting your bride with arrows, picking them up and breaking them in half symbolizes their love for each other. But, I guess it loses something in the translation.
Well, let me ask you, how many times would you like to be able to have the opportunity to shoot your bride with an arrow ever so often?
Anyway, next one. Next one is, okay, are you ready for this one?
Yeah, I'm ready.
It's called fat camps for brides. You've heard of fat. I mean, obviously you've heard of. I mean, I should have said obviously. You know what a fat camp is, right? In America.
Yes, I do.
It's an intensive weight loss, weight reduction type of a camp, but
right.
It's not like what I'm talking about now. Okay, because in contrast to many countries where brides go on these extremely strict diets to lose these extra pounds, which, like, my daughter is like 83 pounds and she's on a diet because she's trying to lose weight before her wedding. But in Mauritius, it's the exact opposite. In Mauritius, brides-to-be are sent to fat camps where they're forced to eat more and gain fat. Because the chubbier the soon-to-be wife, the better, because it's a sign of wealth. And also in that country, the men consider bigger women to be sexier. So that's a wedding tradition, huh? Brings a whole new meaning to, honey, does this wedding gown make me look fat?
Now, I want our two Dave's listeners to understand this is coming from, the man, the husband perspective. So if you have any comments or anything that you want to say, you can, send them and we'll give them to our wives. So
that's right. And that's on our Facebook page, the Two Daves Podcast. Right. Yep.
That's right.
Or don't we have an email address too?
No, I think so, but I don't know what it is yet. We're going to get all that stuff. I don't know what it is. Here, let me call my son. He'll find out.
Just give him your personal email address.
Yeah. Now, this is the last one, and it's called toilet breath.
Oh, that's what my wife calls me.
Well, maybe it's for this reason. France is known for its lovely food. However, there's a wedding tradition that has to be one of the weirdest and grossest ones out there. On the day of a French wedding, Dave, the guests fill a toilet bowl filled with leftover food, which were once deemed delicious, and mixes them with alcohol and anything else they desire. Once they're done doing that, the couple then is obliged to finish the bowl in order to build up strength for their married life. Now, my comment, Dave, is this. If you're marrying somebody that's a bad cook, maybe this is a good thing to do. But this is crazy.
This reminds me of a present that you gave me a number of years back. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Oh, I think so. I
wish I had it here on my desk, but
it's
I don't.
A cup, a toilet bowl cup, right?
Yeah, it's a mug. It's a coffee mug, but it's in the shape of a toilet bowl. Yeah, yeah. I wish, next time I'm going to have it here on my desk, drinking out of it. Yeah, I'll have to remember that.
What are you drinking tonight, Dave, for our podcast?
I'm just drinking sweet tea.
Okay.
Out of a glass. Yeah, sweet tea. I enjoy sweet tea.
Okay, good. And I'm drinking cherry lime LaCroix. It tastes like Alka-Seltzer, goes down like Alka-Seltzer.
Yeah.
But when you get my age, anything tastes good, it seems like. So anyway.
Well, a few weeks ago, we talked about how I like ginger ale.
Yes.
And I had a friend that listened to the podcast, and her name is Tara. And she said to me later, she said that night she had an unusual craving for ginger ale. She couldn't figure out why. And then she remembered that she had heard it on the podcast. So.
Oh, man.
Yeah.
Ginger ale should probably do something for us then.
Yeah, ginger ale is not a brand. I mean, you'd have to, there's several different brands of ginger ale, but
Well, you have to get technical on me, whatever.
Yeah, okay. I know. All right. Now, listen, Dave and I have come up with some incredible marriage helps we've discovered because we're talking about marriage tonight. And a lot of things that we think that.
Dave, how long have you been married?
30 years.
And I've been married 30 years. So doesn't this make sense? 60 years of marriage advice to bring to the people. I think that's good, isn't it?
Listen, I think everybody should put down what they have right now and listen to this because this will help you in your marriages.
I agree.
Yeah. So anyway, we put our research team on this and have come up with a lot of things. And so I'd like to just pass them along to all of our married couples who are listening. These great words of wisdom. Here's the first one. Marriage is like a phone call in the night. First the ring and then you wake up. Think about it.
That is good. I would say a man is incomplete until he is married. And after that, he is finished.
Yeah, that's good. He's finished. We're going to get a lot of hate mail, I have a feeling.
I'm sure.
All right. Well, okay. I got another one. 2 golden rules to a happy marriage. Just 2.
I want to know.
2 golden rules to a happy marriage. Number 1, the wife is always right.
Amen.
Number 2, when you feel she's wrong, slap yourself and read rule number 1 again.
Amen to that too.
Mm-hmm.
These are good.
Yeah.
Again,
great wisdom.
These are things that we've learned over 30 years of marriage.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Okay? Yeah. 60
things like when you hold your wife's hand in the mall, because if you ever let go, she'll start shopping. It looks romantic, but actually it's economic.
Oh yeah. But you know what? Seriously, I've tried that and I just wound up getting drug into the stores. So yeah. Do you have a bench out in the mall with your name carved on it?
Well, when there used to be a mall, yes, I'm sure.
Oh yeah,
that's
right. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, here's one. Just think of marriage as one big adventure as long as you consider the bombing of Pearl Harbor an adventure. Love you, dear.
Yeah. I'm just so thankful our wives don't listen to our podcast.
Yeah, that's right.
The next one. Don't marry a person to reform them.
That's true.
That's what reform school is for.
That's right. That's right. Okay, the best way, I know that there's a lot of men who struggle with trying to remember their wife's birthday. Here's the best way to remember your wife's birthday. Forget it once.
Oh, yes. Have you ever done that, Dave?
I haven't. They call me calendar man. So I remember dates pretty instinctive, kind of almost OCD-ish.
I forgot once.
Oh,
I really
did. You, Dave?
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. It was not good. But I guarantee you I never forgot again.
I bet you didn't. That's a good piece of advice.
Here's one. When yes, dear, whatever you want stops working, it's time to turn up her hearing aids.
Yeah. Yep. You know, dancing can set the mood, but square dancing is not one of those ways.
That's true. Is it like the electric boogaloo, Dave?
Yeah. Yeah.
I like
wait till you see that.
Yeah. I like this one. Never share your spouse's secrets with anyone in person. That's what Facebook is for.
Amen. That's right.
I know couples like that, by the way.
Yeah, I do too. It's amazing that they're still married. Use laughter to your advantage. And if that doesn't work, pull out the credit card.
That's good too. Hey, here's a good one. Always split the household chores. Don't you think that's good, Dave?
I absolutely do. That's important.
80% your wife, 20% your children. I think it's the fair thing to do.
Absolutely. It is. That's a good piece of advice. Also, if you get upset or angry, just take a few minutes before responding, because usually you can think of more stuff to say when you do that.
It's so true. When you go out on a date with your spouse, you know, I think it would be good to tell them, look nice for me, you know. And if they don't, just tell people you're out with your sister or brother or, you know.
Yeah. You know, it's very important to make your spouse a priority before calling a plumber. Yep.
Hey, don't try to change your spouse. At least that's what the guy said in court who was charged with murder.
Yeah. Yep. Reminisce about the good times. And if you can't think of anything, make stuff up.
Oh, boy. And I think maybe we have one more.
Okay.
Leave little love notes around the house for your spouse. Like, honey, make sure to wash my clothes and iron my shirts. Love you that you're still able to do this for me.
Oh boy. Wow. Yeah. You know, I'm reminded of the two older couples that were talking together about marriage and everything. And one guy says to the other one, he says, you know, one of the most significant times in our life is when we went out to eat at this restaurant. He says, oh, what was that place? He says, what's the flower that's red and it has thorns on it? And the other guy says, rose. He says, that's right. Rose, what was that place we ate at? Listen.
Well, if you like that marriage advice, please let us know. And if you didn't, please don't let us know.
Yeah. If it helped you, let us know.
Yes.
Listen, we haven't been talking about marriage just for the fun of it, because we have a mutual friend to talk with us tonight about marriage. We've known Bobby Massey for many years. You and I have, Dave.
Yes.
He and his wife, Beth, have been married for over 37 years. So now we're talking about 97 years of experience here, all combined.
Wow.
The Masseys have 8 children and they have 8 grandchildren. Basically, they ran out of things to do. So
yeah, it's true. That is so true. They have presented marriage encounter weekends in Kansas and in various places throughout the United States for 31 years.
Yep. They've served as the Kansas State coordinators for marriage encounter in the Assemblies of God for 27 years. They've served on the national board of Assemblies of God Marriage Encounter. It's a position they've held for 16 years.
Yes, he is also Telly Savalas's younger brother.
Yes.
Bobby and Beth also served as national clergy couple of AGME, which is the Assemblies of God Marriage Encounter. I hope I'm right with that. They've been presenters worldwide. They've also presented several marriage seminars with curriculum that they've wrote throughout the United States. And maybe later on we can talk to Bobby about using some of the writings that we had tonight for our listeners. We could share that with him. He also wrote things for the United States or for the military couples. I'll get it right, Bobby. Don't worry about it. You just sit there and hear us mess up. Keep going, Dave.
All right. Bobby and Beth ministered at Life Point Church in Valley Center, Kansas for 28 years in different positions. They worked as volunteer staff for a couple of years and then associate and youth pastors for 12 years and finally senior pastors for 14 years. They worked for a while directing Wheat State Camp, and they've served as senior pastors of Hope Church in Wichita since January of 2014.
Bobby and Beth have a passion about seeing our homes become places of training and leadership for the next generation. I love that. They're both actively involved in mentoring men and women in motherhood and in fatherhood.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome to the Two Daves podcast, Bobby Massey. Hello, Bobby.
Hello, gentlemen.
Bobby, sorry that your wife is unable to join us tonight, but we're glad to have you with us.
I'm more sorry than you guys are that Beth's not with us because I'm having to look at you two on the screen instead of look at her.
Oh, I know. Listen, that's a chore. It really is.
Yes.
Bobby, it's good that our listeners know that we don't do video right now, and there's a reason for that. One of the Daves is not, does not have a video face.
No, both of you guys have faces for radio. No doubt about it.
We do. We've been told that before too.
Yeah. I've known you for many years, and it doesn't bother me to say that. So.
You know what? If you knew us for a week, it wouldn't bother you to say it.
No, it wouldn't. You're right. You're right.
Bobby, we were given some advice. You know, Dave and I have had 60 years of marriage combined. So, you know, you would think after 60 years, we have some good advice to give our listeners. And so we want let's just give Bobby a couple of those if we can. And I'm sorry, our listeners have heard this, but here was one that I've learned, and you tell me how good this is. So this one was always split the household chores, 80% for your wife and 20% for your children. It's the fair thing to do.
That's just wonderful advice, Dave. I'm impressed. My advice to both of you guys is I'd like to have time, if I could, to pray with Nita and Charlotte. Because they obviously need some prayer. So
yes,
I'm concerned about their mental state is why I want to pray with them.
Dave, did you have one to share?
Well, yeah, another one that I told people, you know, because some men have a hard time remembering dates, like their wife's birthday. Yeah. And so I just said that the best way to remember your wife's birthday is to forget it once.
That's probably good advice.
Yeah.
I learned that one the hard way. So
that's probably pretty good, Dave. I'm impressed. So yeah.
Hey, Bobby, it's good seeing you, man. I miss seeing my Kansas friends and I miss talking with you. You've always been so nice, and appreciate you coming on tonight to our new adventure in the 2 Daves podcast. And, you know, I feel kind of inadequate tonight because behind me is a picture of my two favorite golfers, and behind Dave is basically nothing. And there you are with books and all, you know, whatever. Oh, Dave's got his dummy. So, you know, I can't tell which one's the dummy or not. So
maybe the dummy has Dave. That's probably more appropriate.
That is probably
I'm
true.
not sure whose hand is in whose back there. You guys miss me, you know you do. Well, behind me, David, are just, they are a nice prop because I have a lot of Zoom meetings now since the pandemic, and
yes,
being a leader here in Kansas as a presbyter and the assemblies and all these different board meetings and stuff. I thought, you know, I needed to put up some nice books and stuff to make me look like I'm smart. So I'm glad it impressed you.
That's good. Well, when Dave and I come out with our new book of marriage advice, I'm sure that you can put that up in your bookshelf too. So
yeah, because one page books really impress people.
I do a lot of work in theater, and an important prop is books, and they're just like there's nothing inside. They're just shells that look like books on the outside. So is that what you have?
Yeah, that's exactly what I have. So
yeah.
Okay. My knowledge is much like your theater. There's not a whole lot to it. So
it's also kind of like Dave's marriage, but we'll talk about that later on. So
we're getting into that.
Hey,
we're getting into that.
I think it's time we get into our discussion. And since our introduction of you took 15 minutes, it's time we keep going. So just joking.
I have 2 minutes left. Thanks, guys. I appreciate it.
Anyway, that's what you never mind. Anyway, so first of all, let's talk about this marriage encounter, and what is it what's the role that you and Beth play in marriage encounter? What is marriage encounter, and what do you guys do?
Well, we have actually been involved since we went to a marriage encounter in 1987. So that tells you many, many years ago. We'd only been married 4 years at the time. Revolutionized our lives. And so we began working and presenting marriage encounter in 1989, 1990 was when we actually presented for the first time. But basically, what I like about the dynamic of marriage encounters is the fact that it's not like counseling or anything else. I believe it's using biblically the one tool that God gave us, and that is the ability for a husband and wife to actually walk through their their conflicts, walk through the experiencing the oneness that they are to have, and letting them actually be their own counselors. And I remember one time we presented in Houston, Texas, and there was a couple that had been married almost 40 years. And afterwards, this lady, the woman comes up to me and she says, Pastor, I sure wish that that I had all the money that we have spent the last 10 years on marriage counselors, because this weekend we've learned more about each other in our whole life in one weekend than we have for 40 years. And we have experienced more healing in this weekend than we have in 10 years of marital therapy. I sure wish that we could take the money that we have given to those counselors and invest it in the marriage ministry of Marriage Encounter. Of course, I said, I do too. We would like to have that.
Yes.
But that to me, it kind of goes back years ago, probably about 20 years ago. I was in my office and I get a phone call from the Wichita Eagle newspaper here. And the reporter on the other end said, Reverend Massey, I know that you work with Marriage Encounter and you work with these different ministries, and I'd like to find out exactly, what you believe is the secret to a happy marriage. And I said, so what's this all about anyway? He said, well, I'm going to do an article in the Wichita paper this week on why marriage is better than co-inhabiting. And so I found out you work with Marriage Encounter, so I'd like to interview you for the paper. And so I said, well, I don't believe in happy marriage. And he's like, what? What are you talking about? And I said, well, I believe in holy marriage that makes someone live happy. And but I said, I'm going to tell you what I believe the secret is, but you won't believe it and you won't understand it. So we're probably kind of wasting our time. He's like, try me. I said, no, you won't believe it. Try me, please. Come on. And I said, no, I think we're wasting our time. You won't believe it and you won't understand it. He said, man, you got me on the edge, and you got to tell me. I said, well, I believe the greatest secret to a holy marriage, which produces happy marriage, is divine coupleness. He said, I have no clue what you're saying. You're right. I don't get it. What are you talking about? He said, so you got to explain that. I said, I believe that God in his sovereignty puts couples together because he believes that the best way that person could become who they are supposed to be, the way their character is going to be shaped, the way they can live their life to the fullest and truly experience all that he has for them, is this other person needs to be in their life. They are going to be the sandpaper to their wood. They are going to be the pollen to their nostrils. They are going to be what they don't like and what they do like, and it's going to shape their life. And that divine coupleness, if they can understand that, will result in a spiritual oneness that will allow them to then have emotional oneness that's unified and physical oneness that's unified. The problem is our world is upside down. We're convinced that if you get physical oneness and you just have good sex, life is great. But the problem is the word eros, where we get our word erotic, literally means no focal point, no place of going back to. It means nothing to hold on to. Phileo, emotional love, is wonderful. We got to be friends. But if there's not a spiritual unity and a divine coupleness, then we are going to somewhere come to a demise. We're not going to make it. And so I said, if we can get people to understand that, and they can communicate their way to that, love one another in that, then we can work down from there. So he writes all this stuff down, and the next morning, or that Sunday morning, about 3 or 4 days later, I go out to pick up my Wichita paper from my driveway. And again, this is like 20 years ago. I open it up, and the front page talks about, is marriage worthwhile? And then it starts with this: the Reverend Bobby Massey believes that the secret to a holy marriage that will make one happy is divine coupleness. And then the author goes, and now let me explain that. And so basically, he was going to interview 5 other people in the Wichita area, a Catholic priest who overdid marriage, a counselor, that kind of thing. And he interviewed none of them. And all he did was write what I shared with him, because I do believe that if people grasp it, it just revolutionizes the way they think. They go, now hold it. So that means when we have conflict, it's okay. That means when we argue, it's okay. That means God is shaping me through this person. Yeah. because the secret, the whole essence of your life is that you will always come across blind spots, and no one knows blind spots more than your spouse. And a blind spot is best defined as where your spouse sees you could be and you see where you are or where you have been. And so they're saying to you, they're looking at the two Daves and they're saying, man, you guys, Charlotte looks at you, Dave, and she says, you could be this. And our response back is defensiveness. We say, but I'm not like this. And the difference between those two is our blind spot. They see what we could be, we see what we've been, and we're living where we are. So if we're going to get to where we're going to go, then there's a good chance God's going to use that very person to pour something into us that's going to challenge us in our way of thinking. And no one knows us better than the person we're married to. They know our ins, outs, goods, bads, and everything. So there's your long answer to a short question. Okay.
I've talked to several people about Marriage Encounter, and one common thing that people tell me about the possibility of attending a Marriage Encounter weekend is, I don't really feel like our marriage is in trouble.
Yeah.
That's not the purpose of Marriage Encounter, right? We're not talking about marriages that are in trouble.
Exactly, David. That's a great point, because it's enrichment. And I always respond back to that by just, you say, well, do you only eat because you're starving? I mean, or do you only go to the doctor because you have physicals, you have checkups, you do this for things. And Marriage Encounter, there's a reason. My wife and I love doing it twice a year in Kansas and several times around the United States. And like I said, we've worked with military couples overseas. It's refreshing to us. It's like getting another good, we will do it this coming weekend in Wichita. And it's every 6 months in Kansas. And when we do it, it will literally just be like another dose of refreshment for us. Now, 20 years ago, we birthed another ministry called Marriage Restored, and it runs out of Marriage Encounter, but it's based on crisis, addictive behaviors, infidelity. It is exactly what you just talked about, David. If you have a couple, and I have couples that come through my church, and they are in a place of, we literally have had people go to Marriage Restored that have papers filed, and all we ask is that they put their papers down and they come, and we will actually get them separate rooms if necessary, because we always believe there's a chance and we want to give them that opportunity. And what we did is, when we birthed that ministry, we found couples that had been to Marriage Encounter that had been through that had been through, were almost divorced and walked through the pain and the healing of reconciliation. And now they are our presenters for that. And so nationwide, we have presenters that their life message is why, and here in Wichita, we have a couple that actually used to be in our church in Valley Center when we pastored there, who are our state coordinators for Marriage Restored. And we run them side by side. Of course, David, you have pastored in Kansas, because we call them Healthy Marriage Weekends, and we run them side by side. And we say, I promote to pastors, if you got a crisis couple, send them to Marriage Restored. If you got couples that just want to be enriched and refreshed, come to Marriage Encounter. It's for anybody. So that's kind of the difference of the two.
Okay, good. As we go down we're navigating this COVID road of life. What do you think? How has COVID affected marriages?
Well, the national statistics on mental health and marriage are off the charts right now. And I believe it's because I actually had the privilege of doing a radio show here in Wichita about 6 months ago. No, it's probably about 4 months ago, on what's going on with marriage in the pandemic. And I was really, really praying about, what was going on, because my office was overflowed with marital therapy and working with couples. And so I was just really, what's going on here? What is this all about? And what I found was that what we talked about a while ago, there's no point of communication. There's no oneness. And so what had happened is where couples had numerous places of distraction. We can go to our kids' ball game. We can do this. We can be involved in this. We can even be involved in church, and we can have separate ministries, everything else. So what the pandemic did is it magnified any crack that was within in that relationship, because now they're together and now they don't have something to distract them away from dealing with the stuff. And so here they are, they're sitting in the same house. They got to come up with something to do, and they don't have communication skills. They don't know what to do. And so what I found is couples that truly, truly love one another found out that they don't really like one another. And they were at one time wonderful friends, and they've had kids, life has gone on, they've been married 15, 20 years, and they don't like each other. They don't really like to hang out. And so what do you do if you're friends? David, Martin, I've known you for a long time, but David Pugh, you and I have talked numerous times. We're good friends. I mean, so, we like to talk. Well, what do you want to do with friends? You like to talk. You like to connect. Last time we talked on the phone, David, we talked for an hour and a half on the phone. But why? Because you like to talk to people that are your friends. Well, what happened is the pandemic revealed that we've lost the friendship in marriage. And once that's lost, you gotta start working again from the top. If we can get the oneness factor, understand the divine coupleness, then we can be friends, and we can begin to just talk, and we can walk through our feelings. And that's why our marriage encounter here in Wichita is overflowing. I mean, even just as the pandemic is starting to lift, we have a waiting list, because they realize, you know what, we gotta get out. We gotta get somewhere where we can talk. And I was meeting with a couple this afternoon in my office that we're starting marital therapy with here in my church. I told them, I said, you guys love each other. You wouldn't be meeting with your pastor, but you just don't like each other. And the husband went, that's exactly it. And the difference is this: if you guys were my friends on the playground and we were fourth graders and we got in a fight in the middle of the playground, I can choose to say, I'll get new friends. I can choose to say, I'm not coming to the middle of the playground again. The Daves and I aren't playing anymore. I'm going to go over here. But we're not in a playground. We're in a marriage covenant. So I can't just choose to take my toys and go home. I've got to choose to be at home with my toys. And if I'm at home and I'm there with my spouse, I better learn to communicate. So the pandemic has revealed the cracks on the sidewalk, and the pandemic has revealed that crack is really the ability to be friends and communicate. And as a result of that, we've gone to our separate rooms and said, okay, it just magnified what was already going on. And honestly, to me, as a pastor, kind of in a good way, it allowed us to quit living behind a shell or a shadow and said, okay, we got to come out here in the front and see what's going on.
That's good.
You look at church ministry and the family, and the Lord speaks about, the mysteries of the church, of the family. Yeah. And you look at a church that needs to be revitalized, and, there's the beginnings, and then, there's all that goes to it. Then you get on the wrong side of that circle and you head towards the death part of the church. And the only way you can come out of that is you got to spark a new arc into new life again. And I look at, it's so easy that if we're not intentional about it, that our marriages can become dormant, and we're close to that death part of our marriage. And, I love what Marriage Encounter does. And, you're just talking about today, the oneness that we get. Of course, we know the oneness is the source is Christ, but he gives us the ability to be able to connect with one another in such a way that there's life found in that, and so I don't know. I think you're talking that. When was that article, by the way? Did you say like 4 months ago, or when was that?
Well, I did the radio show like 4 months ago. That article was like 20 years ago.
Okay.
Yeah. It's okay.
So don't you think, statistics will tell us, especially, I did some research, Bobby. So
Mary. No, it was our research team.
No, yeah, research team. Yes.
Yes.
Marriage has been down. It's been trending down for a long time. At least from the statistics that I found, that tells us that instead of people coming together in marriage, holy matrimony, they're just either living together or whatever, keeping their options, so if this doesn't work out, they can go on. We know the whole thing. According to last year, it said that there was a 10% drop, and much could be the result of the pandemic because the people didn't want to spend $15,000 on a wedding to have nobody show up.
Yeah.
But there is a trending rate, and it's kind of disturbing when you look at it that people don't want to enter into that covenant, and they just want to pretend. And what's your view on that, Bobby?
No, I think that's just again another picture of our culture. They have no problem with physical oneness. I mean, they're living together. I've challenged a couple the other day that I'm talking to that's living together. I said, well, they said, we just don't want to have all the trappings of marriage. I said, well, good, then you'll need to quit having sex. And they're like, well, what? Well, no. Well, no. Okay. So evidently covenant is wrong, but fornication is cool.
Yeah.
and
yeah.
And you go, now, why did God establish this covenant? He established this covenant because anything God does, he does it because it brings greater health.
Yeah.
So how is it healthy in a culture to have people that are not committed to one another? How is that healthy anywhere? It's not healthy. It's not healthy in any relationship. It's not healthy in anything that we do. So God says the way to have a healthy family is to have people committed to one another. So watch children that come out of a relationship where there is no commitment and no covenant. They will not know covenant. It's unhealthy. And so we look at divorce and we say, well, that's unhealthy for the next generation, which is why in Malachi, God says he hates it because it covers one's garment with violence, or it covers the next generation with unforgiveness, is what literally that means. And so you have in our culture the thought of, well, this is okay. This will make things fine. At least we're living together and we're just trying to see if it works and that type of thing. So what I have is I have a blank check of saying I don't have to commit to anything, which makes life extremely unhealthy. And amazingly, those same people, and you can talk to them. I always try to talk to people like that because many of them don't know the Lord and they just want to talk. But here's what I found. If I can get people to not have a discussion, if I can get them away from the emotion of it and get them to the logic of it, it's an amazing conversation. Because I'll ask them things like, so you don't want to live your life in a commitment to a relationship. Right. Okay. So let me know about your commitment of relationship to your local bank. Can they just take your money anytime they want? How about your commitment of loyalty to the car dealership you bought your car at? Is there any commitment there? I mean, if you walked in and you bought a warranty and they said to you, I'm sorry, we're just not committed to you. It's okay. We just wanted to kind of live together with you. And I just want to know if logically you are going to run your life and want it to be healthy, if it's going to be healthy in all these other areas, if you had the same mentality that you had with marriage. Because if that's logic, if you're logically going to live that way, I honor that. I honor that. If I'm your banker and I can say to you at any given moment, I take all of the money out of your account and thank you for coming by, because we weren't really committed to each other. I just wanted your money to live in my bank. I just wanted it to live there for a while. And right now I've decided I want it. So God bless. Thanks. It was wonderful. In fact, it was pleasurable. It was almost erotic that I could just be with you for that time. And I'm really glad that you kept making deposits, because that really makes our relationship breaking up not quite as difficult for me. Well, it's not logical. It's unhealthy. And so that's where I come from, is it's just a natural result of a culture that doesn't want to commit, and they don't understand the power of commitment is actually health. The power of commitment is actually health. It's not just so God wanted to do something really cool. It's because I am healthier. I am healthier in my relational life with my wife in a covenant relationship with me. I'm healthier in my relational life with you guys because of my relationship with my wife. I'm healthier in my relationship with my children because of my relationship with my wife. I'm healthier as a pastor in my relationship with people in the church because of my relationship with my wife. It's a health issue.
That's good. That's really good.
You know, there's a term used in divorce court. It's I'm sure we've all heard of it: irreconcilable differences. It technically means that a person and their spouse can't get along with one another enough to keep the marriage alive. Well, conflict, yes. Trouble, yes. But irreconcilable differences? No, there shouldn't be that. What does this really signal it's wrong with many marriages today when they file for divorce under irreconcilable differences?
That's, to me, David, that's exactly what I talked about with this couple in my office today. That is the definition of I've fallen out of like with my couple. I've fallen out of like. I don't like them. I cannot play on the playground of life with them any longer. Irreconcilable differences or incompatibility. All that is I do not have the ability, I'm unwilling to take the ability to walk through this pain. And so because of that, it's easier for me to move on away from the emotional pain that it will take for me to forgive, for me to walk through restoration, reconciliation. It will be easier for me if I can just simply move away from this situation. And here's what happens. This is a danger I found in marital therapy. There'll be couples who come into my office and they'll say, well, Pastor, right now we're at a place where we just are smashing against one another. Again, pollen knows. And I just can't. And I actually say to them, what's happened? The phrase that God has given me a long time ago in dealing with couples is I say, you're having an allergic reaction to one another. And so when you walk in the room, I'm sneezing. And so I've got to do something about that. So here's what I tell couples. They'll say, can we just separate and go, maybe I'll go live with my mom for a month and he'll be at the house. And so I always put parameters on that, because if you're not careful, what you're doing is you're giving an opportunity for the enemy, for Satan to really come in and bring division. And here's why. Within a week, and you can tell the couple this, and they'll come in, they'll go, man, you're a prophet. No, I've just been around this for about 1 million years. But here's what happens. They'll come in with about a week and they'll say, man, I am doing so much better. I'm doing so much better. And, maybe the Lord wants us to separate. Maybe he wants us to divorce because I feel so much better. And I said, well, of course you do. If I was jabbing you with a sharp instrument every day and you walked out of for a week, you're probably going to say, that feels much better. I'm not being jabbed with that. But I said, here's what you've done. And here's the key. And this is one of the struggles that people have. They've equated emotional relief with spiritual deliverance. They are not the same, but they are relieved emotionally because they're not having to deal with conflict. But that is not spiritual deliverance. And my response to couples is always this: if Jesus did that, he would have never gone to the cross.
That's true.
Because emotional relief would have been not to die for you, but spiritual deliverance meant that he had to die for you. So if a couple is going to reconcile, they're going to have to die to themselves instead of saying, I just want to feel better about my life. And there's where that irreconcilable difference comes back. Somebody's going to have to die to themselves. They're going to have to decide I don't want emotional relief. I want spiritual deliverance, which will result in emotional relief. But if you equate this one for this one, you got problems.
Yeah. This is good. You said, well, we said this about you, that you're actively involved in mentoring men and women in motherhood and fatherhood, and you're about the next generation. I mean, we're doing more than just raising children. We're raising future moms and dads.
Yes.
And husbands and wives. And, with many years of ministry, and this as well, so many people were raised in an atmosphere where everything goes against the grain of covenant relationships, of oneness. Sure. And so they each bring in their own, ways of doing things. And this is why it's so important that we can get to people as young as they are and build them up in the things of God, especially in dealing with, who they need to be in Christ. I mean, when they look at mom and dad, it needs to be more than it's just because I say so. They need to see the fatherhood. They need to see what it is to be a husband. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Can you kind of talk about what are some things that you're doing? Like you're passionate about that, but what kind of things do you do to help the next generation? And maybe you're helping a lot of adults who maybe really don't know much about motherhood and fatherhood, but there they are with 2 or 3 kids.
Yeah. There's a huge situation right there. There's been a gap, if you will, in the last probably 15, 20 years of what fatherhood and motherhood really is. And so you have a lot of the millennial age kids. Now, first thing I want to say is, I think I'm 58 years old. And so I'm older than both of you guys, but not to
together,
not to combine. But
okay.
The thing that I think is missing, and I'll tell you a quick story along this. I think that my generation has to embrace with joy, millennials and Generation Z and all, they have to embrace with joy the fact that they think differently and they process differently and they don't get their proverbial panties in a wad, and they're willing to work with this generation. And I said from the pulpit probably about 2 months ago, I was preaching and I talked about how much I love millennials and how my staff, 3 of my staff are millennials, and how they push me. They think, they're creatives. They question everything in staff meeting. They want to question it. And I give them the floor and I let them be able to change my mind. A girl comes up afterwards who's probably mid-20s. No, I'd say early 20s. And she's crying. And she says, "Pastor, I need to tell you something." Now, I have a lot of millennials in my church because of that, and a lot of the next generation after the millennials. And I'll say, she's crying, and she said, "I want you to know, I've been in Wichita for about 5 years. I've gone to church after church. You are the first person in ministry that I've heard say they love millennials."
Oh.
She said, "All I ever hear is what useless people we are, how we don't have any goals in life, how we don't care. All we are is social activists, all we are." And she said, "I have never heard anybody in the evangelical church not cut us down." And so she said, "You got me. I am here because I want to be used of God." So first thing we got to do is we got to value who they are, and we got to value the next generation, and we got to let them know there, because here's what, and we were the same way when we were kids. And that is this: when I was 16, 17 years old, I didn't know who I was. And so I'm looking for an identity. That's why the transgender movement is so, because they are accepted in that movement. And so while the church is over here going, "Get your act together," people over there going, "We just love you for who you are." And so if we can first of all let them know that, hey, look, we love you for who you are. We're going to help you find your identity in Christ, like you said, Dave. We're going to help you find your identity. Then that's the first thing for that generation. Now, for the older ones, for me personally and for Beth, we just do a lot of one-on-one mentoring and modeling before people, because I'm convinced the model of Jesus was not sitting in a room having a Bible study with 12 people. The model of Jesus was, we're going to go do life together. And as we do life together, we're going to come up on some crappy stuff. And we're going to have to decide how we're going to walk through this. We're going to meet this woman at the well. She's going to be a 5-time loser and living with a guy. And her life is a mess. And you guys are going to want to go into town and not be around her. But I'm going to reveal myself to her that I'm the Messiah. We're going to come across people like this that are dirty and ugly, and we don't want to be around them. But I'm going to show you how to do life with them. And I'm going to show you how to be a better parent. And I'm going to show you how you can walk through conflict with your kids. And so we do a lot of that. And then Beth and I have mentored couples in our church. And we now have a mentoring couple ministry in our church where we do a monthly couple workshop. And then we have couples that we have trained how to do life with another couple, and just show them that you can have conflicts in your marriage, and your marriage is not going to end because of that. And so these couples simply once a month, they just go out and they spend time together mentoring this other couple on how to do marriage, just how to be a married couple, how to live your life, knowing that you're going to have conflict, knowing that you're going to do that. And now what we use as an example, again, is the life of Jesus. And what I do in my teaching on this with couples and with individuals is this: 12 guys follow Jesus. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
They are not clones. They are 12 personalities. And so on this side of the room, I have a guy named James the Zealot, who is the equivalent of a terrorist in our culture. He's a zealot. He will kill anybody in the Roman government he can, and he will lead an insurrection if he can. He's no different than Barabbas, and he is a zealot.
Yeah.
On this side of the coin, I've got a guy named Matthew who has sold himself out to the Roman government to collect taxes. He is hated by the Jewish nation because he's a sellout. So you got a zealot and a sellout, and they're sitting in the same room, and Jesus is training them. And I just think that there came a point where Jesus sent the disciples out 2 by 2. I just think in the sovereignty of God that he went, Matthew, James, you two are going to go together now. I need you guys to go out. And I just think to myself that James has got to be sitting there, I'm going to kill him. And so what Jesus does is he creates conflict in order to shape them into disciples. He doesn't run away from conflict. He mentors in the midst of it. And so that's really our passion in church ministry is, guys, we're not going to run away from conflict. We're not going to hide. We're going to live life, and we're going to learn how to be parents and couples. And to me, that's the discipleship model. That's what makes a healthy church, if you can do that. And so that's kind of our goal, and that's what we've really aspired to.
That's good. Mm-hmm. Well, also, if you look into scripture, 1 Corinthians 7:28, and I know you know this, the Apostle Paul says that we will have trouble in our marriage. Yeah, I know. But
never use that scripture. I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know. And I like what you were saying, that a lot of times God uses the conflict to bring about some really, really good and deep things that happen within the couple. And so we might look at trouble in a very bad way, but I think, it came to no surprise to Paul. That's why he said this, trouble is not a death wish. It's an opportunity.
Yeah.
And so, I think people we live in a culture today where people run away from conflict, or now with social media, we put what we want to say on there, and then we hide behind our comments.
Yeah.
So you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So it's people run away from the conflict, but boy, we need to teach people how to enter conflict. I had to go through counseling back in 2010 because I just wasn't processing my life well. I wasn't processing people, and just for this and that and the other, but a year and a half of counseling. And I'll tell you, Marcia Melhoff, you know Marcia at all?
Sure. Yeah.
She was my counselor. And I can tell you, for the first month, I would leave that place saying, I can't stand her. And because she was making me more than just speak the scripture, she was making me do something with it.
Yeah.
That I had actually kind of gotten away from. And the greatest thing that happened to me was, man, when I finally got back to doing what I was supposed to be doing. And so I'm not afraid of conflict. Nobody really just loves it, but the reality is there's good that happens out of this conflict.
Sure. I do a ton of premarital counseling because I met with a couple. I met with two couples actually. I was 7 hours of premarital counseling on Saturday with two different couples. So when I got home, I told Beth, I don't think I want to talk about marriage for a while. But she goes, yeah, no kidding. You just want to sit on the couch and drool. But
that's what you do a lot.
Yeah, that's just a lot. So
You're 58.
At 58, yeah. My dog just goes, why does he get to drool and I can't on the couch? That's no fair. Mm-hmm. And I said, hey, you got in the backyard and mark your turf. I can't do that. So you get to do what you gotta do. But I was meeting with these couples, and here's what I always tell young couples that are getting married. I tell them, you're really not in love yet. And they'll go, what? They get that look on their face like, what? And I tell them always the same thing. You are infatuated with the feeling of total acceptance, because never before in your life have you been totally accepted by somebody, warts and all. And it's euphoric. It's euphoric to be totally accepted. Up to this point, everyone has rejected you somewhere. But this person, you handed them a ring and they said yes. They said yes to all of your warts, all of your good, bad. And here's what's going to happen. You're going to get married, and you're going to be married for a year or two, and that euphoria begins to wear off. And what happens is that's when you will discover what we say in Marriage Encounter, that love is a decision. It's not a feeling. And you will have to fight through the conflicts of life to understand love is a decision. You will fight through that, and you'll do great. But you're not going to have that euphoric feeling in the middle of your conflict. You're going to have to come to a place where you understand conflict. And that's where I always use the sandpaper and wood illustration. And of course, when you're meeting with a young couple in your office and they're getting ready to get married in 2 months, they hear you say sandpaper wood, but they're not ready to apply it. And that's wonderful.
No.
Sure.
But what they do hear, they will remember in a couple of years, and they'll go, you remember when Pastor Bobby told us in the office, right now you're being my sandpaper, and I don't really care for it much because you're about 30 grade on my sandpaper. And so what happens is, but they remember that, and they realize, life is not over because we're having a conflict. I love Psalm 119. I believe it's 119:67. Before I knew your word, I went astray. But now I love your decrees. In other words, and before I should say, when I went astray, I suffered. Now I know your decrees. In other words, David was saying, look, when I messed up, you corrected me, and I suffered a little bit. It wasn't easy. And that conflict taught me something about myself. And, I think it's important. Jesus did not say, come unto me and I'm going to make your life better. He said, come unto me and you're going to have to die. And if you will die to yourself, your life will be better. But if you come unto me, don't expect a bed of roses. Expect a life where you're going to have to deal with this selfish flesh. And in marriage and in everywhere, we're going to have to deal with the fact that we like our way.
Well, Bobby, why don't you lead us through some of those practical things that some married couples can do to walk through conflict and trouble?
Okay. Well, one of the things, like the couple I met with tonight, I think one of the things that is very important to do is we got to learn to speak life into one another. Because usually, David, when there's conflict and the conflict is raging in a relationship, the one thing that's lacking is grace. It's not love. They love each other, but you don't like each other unless you have grace involved. Grace is the ability to say, I will overlook things and I will care about you. And so the way that we get grace, according to scripture, is we humble ourselves. And the way we give grace is we edify and we speak life. So I ask the couple, the first thing I do is when I'm dealing with a couple that's really struggling with conflict, is I ask them to push aside their conflicts and not focus on them for a while. And I ask them to take the first thing I will do with a couple is ask them to take a 2-week journey with me. And that what they're going to do is every day for 2 weeks in the morning, before they depart, I ask them to speak a word of edification to one another. I just tell them to look in each other's eyes, and not a word of flattery, not, hey, you got the most beautiful dress, or hey, you look, I love the way you comb your hair. Obviously can't for me because I have none, but but something like this. I love the fact, I just want you to know, I appreciate your patience, because edification always focuses on a character quality that can only improve. And what I did is then I minister grace to that person. And that person might look back and say, I appreciate the fact that you're a hard worker and you're going to go provide and you're going to work for us today and whatever. But for 2 solid weeks, I ask them to do that every morning. And then I ask them at night, if they are believers, I ask them to at least attempt to pray together. And I ask them to simply if that means that they just say, Lord, help this person have a good night's sleep, just something that ties them together in oneness. Because if they can do that, that's the first practical things. If they can do that, then we can begin to talk about their conflicts and what they're going through. And the other thing I tell couples is this, and in the midst of conflict, first of all, I'm going to try to get them to go to Marriage Encounter, because they can sit down and work through their feelings about it. But I tell them not to fight from the aspect of judgment, but rather from feelings, understanding that they feel certain ways. And out of that, they're making judgments. And so they're fighting usually over an accusation or judgment. You do this or you do this, instead of I feel this way as because of what's happening here. And so they're fighting from that judgment mentality. And so they're beating each other up over that. They're shooting the arrow of judgment. And I believe that usually, and couples love this, it's just something God gave me about 10 years ago, meeting with couples. I call it the 30-30-40 rule. I say, when you come into my office to see me, 30% of what the wife says is true. 30% of what the husband has said is true. And I'll say, that's wonderful, but you're always going to paint the conflict into your way in what you're supposed to do. I mean, hey, I'm not entering a conflict if I don't think I can win. Why would I be in the conflict? You know what I'm saying? I came to fight. Mm-hmm. I came to win. So I'm going to paint it like I'm right. 30, 30, 40. The 40% is actually where Jesus lives. And it's my responsibility as your pastor to get you to that 40%, because the 40% is actually the truth. The 30% is tainted by your feelings and tainted by your feelings. The 40% is the covenant. And if I can get you there, then these two sides of conflict will begin to melt into that. And you'll begin to melt into the fact that we are one, and we are actually in this together. And all of a sudden those 30s turn into 20s, they turn into 10s. And then we finally get them to 0, and we have 100% covenant. And so that's awesome. That's what we're working toward.
That's good. I like that. God's in the 40%.
Yeah,
that's good.
That's good.
That's really good. Can I use that sometime in preaching? That's some good stuff right there.
Now, are you going to give David Pugh the credit for that? My good friend David told me this great insight.
Yeah.
Oh,
you can use any of this stuff, and any pastor can. We just need to get the word out, help marriages.
I like this. This is really good. So, marriages, to thrive and not survive. That's our goal, right?
Yeah. That's exactly what I teach. And I actually did a series recently called Thrive or Survive, and based on the pandemic and the fact that you heard people say all the time, if we can just survive 2020, and I told our folks on a Sunday morning, there has not been a staff meeting of COVID. It did not have a staff meeting and say, okay, look, we got till December 31. So work your butts off, because after December 31, we're in trouble. They're kicking us out of here. It did not say that. And so we have to understand that we have been in marriages and in relationships in survival mode way too long. Yeah. Somewhere along the line, we've got to decide. And to me, John 15 is the answer to that. Survive is I'm just on the branch and hanging out there. Thriving is bringing forth fruit and allowing God. Now, the key to thriving is I got to be willing to be pruned. Yeah. But if you read John 15, here's how I read it. I'm going to get cut either way. If I don't bear fruit, God's going to cut me off and say, move on. But if I do bear fruit, he's going to cut back any extra in my life so I can bring forth more. So if I'm going to get cut either way, I might as well be cut thriving instead of surviving.
Yeah, that's good.
How many times do you ask people, how you doing? And they say, oh, surviving. And isn't that sad?
Yeah,
when it is. They just survive. Yeah.
Yeah. I got this guy every Sunday that I shake his hand and, how are you doing? He goes, I'm blessed and highly favored. Can't get any better today.
Wow.
Like, I said, I want to hug you he goes, that's how I always answer. He goes, I don't care what I'm going through. God's blessed me. I'm like,
Bobby, we got a guy in our church that says the same thing.
Really? I'm telling you, isn't it awesome?
It is.
You want to push aside about 50 people to go greet them.
Yeah. I know.
Instead, I find the people, I say, how you doing? And they say, I'm here. And I'm saying, no, I didn't ask where you are. I asked how you are. I'm here. So, yeah. Hey, listen, Bobby, we've come to the place in our podcast. We like to have fun playing a quick game with our guests before we have to say goodbye.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Now this is a new game we're going to try on you, Bobby, because we feel like you can handle it. We're calling this the first thing that comes to your mind.
Well,
Okay.
there's not much of a mind here. So
Okay. Well, I actually tried this game with the other Dave, but all he could ever say was like Dan Quell, presidential buttons, and that reminds me of my dummy. So, it didn't work for him, but we're hoping this works on you. So
yeah. Okay. Anyway, let's do this. We're gonna say something, okay? And you're gonna say the first thing that comes to your mind. It's word association, okay?
yeah, all right.
All right. Nickname.
Nickname.
Lord, touch Bobby right now, if you would, please.
Well, I was getting ready to say a nickname. I'll say Ott.
Okay. Vacation spot.
Branson.
Favorite song.
Can't Stop Believing.
The sitcom MASH.
First thing that comes to my mind, Klinger.
Pet peeve.
Being on podcast.
Okay, my turn. We'll conclude with this now. Retirement.
Getting there.
Restaurant.
Cracker Barrel.
Bucket list.
My bucket list, my wife and I've talked about this, East Coast drive trip.
Yeah. A1A highway, brother, right there.
There you go.
If I could go back in time,
I would spend more time with my kids.
last one. If I could change one thing,
I would not be so performance oriented.
we could do a whole podcast on all those answers because I'm curious about some of those.
Yeah.
I want to thank you, Bobby, for coming on, and I hope we can have you on again because there's a lot to talk about when it comes to this, and we really desire to see marriages become what God intended them to be, and it's going to take work, but hey, we have that. So don't go anywhere, Bobby. We'll talk to you after this, but thanks again for joining us and doing life with us. Yeah.
I hate to interrupt, but Bobby, I think maybe it might be good. Can we just ask you to share how can somebody get involved with the Marriage Encounter?
Simple, David. Thank you. Go to agme.org.
agme.org.
And what you're going to do there is it's going to have upcoming events. It's going to have what Assemblies of God Marriage Encounter is all about. And you'll see, like ours is coming up in a week in Wichita, like this weekend, but you'll see them all over the United States. But agme.org. And Marriage Restored is marriagerestored.com, the whole word, marriagerestored.com. They are sister ministries. Again, Marriage Restored started as a daughter of Marriage Encounter, but has now reached the place that we kind of try to keep them, we wanted it to flourish in that way. So I would view it more as a sister than a daughter ministry of Marriage Encounter. So
for those of you that are listening on YouTube, we'll put that on in the comments below for you to see. By the way, do you know Greg and Rochelle Colgrove?
I do not.
They are Marriage Encounter presenters down in we're at Missouri,
St. Louis or
Branson area. They're in Nixa.
Gotcha. Okay. Well, they probably might work with the Springfield community. I know most of the couples there. Are you sure they're with AGME or that they might be with Worldwide Marriage Encounter?
That could be.
Yeah.
That's a question that's above my level of pay right there.
Well, actually, I asked Greg and he says he knows who you are, but he's tried to avoid you. So that might have something to do with it.
That can be said of a lot of people.
Yeah.
exactly. Most of people in eastern Kansas, probably.
Yeah.
Bobby, one last thing. I didn't know if you noticed, but my hair is stayed dark over all these years.
Yeah, it's jet black. I mean, I'm just amazed how David Martin is probably one of the best looking men I've seen, and you're slender now. I mean, back when I knew you in Hayes, Kansas, you were just a little chubby guy with, and everything, and you have so many issues, but Iowa has been very, very good to you. I have to admit that. So.
Thank you. I've dropped 80 pounds and have 70 to go, Bobby, but I'm getting there.
Well, you look good. You look good.
Just like Dave has lost 70 IQ points, but he's eventually.
Yeah. Well, people have told me, Pastor, you could lose about 20 ugly pounds. And I say, but I don't believe in decapitation. So
On that note, hey, thanks again for joining us and doing life with us for this short time. And as always, we would encourage you to share this podcast with your friends. And as we always say, your enemies as well. Until next time, remember this: 2 Daves are always better than one.
Hasta la vista.